With the UK easing out of a strict coronavirus lockdown, some Londoners are saying it may have been too soon to implement the plan.
Too soon because reading from the news, the death rates are still continuous and they're not exactly dropping down. So for people like myself and other key workers and everything else to travel back and forth to work.
I mean, I think it's a risky strategy, but I think if people know their rights as employees, you don't have to go back if you think it's unsafe. The government can protect you and your employer can furlough you and you can still be protected financially. So if you don't feel safe enough to be doing it.
Everyone's been locked down for 2-3 months now, and so everyone's really excited to go out, and it kind of doesn't help because no one's really following any rules for even the second phase now.
I'm having a problem with the disabled problem with me. So I think I have to wear the mask because I've got breathing problem as well.
And to look at this developing story, I have joining me from London a journalist, Amina Taylor. Good to have you join us, Amina Taylor. Now, a lot of people, like we had just spoke, are saying, look, this is too soon. Do you also share that opinion that it might just be too soon to ease the lockdown?
Well, I think one of the problems here is that there's a confusion in the messaging. Your report mentioned the fact that the United Kingdom is split on this issue, with England being the only one saying, return to work if you can, this kind of stay alert message that's replaced the stay at home. Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, was clear in her messaging. Unless there is something you know about that constitutes one of these emergencies, one of these essential working scenarios, then stay at home. Boris Johnson has, I think, even as a critic, a difficult balancing act here, because as you heard from Rishi Sunak, who is the finance minister, this contraction, the fact that Britain will most definitely join the other European countries and be a part of this largest global recession since World War II, 300 billion has been the coronavirus bill for the UK at the moment, and that's bound to continue as the Chancellor has talked about this furlough being implemented until at least October. So if the government's pouring out all this money, where is it coming from in order to replenish the coffers? And I think the Conservatives, being a party of business, they have to start making some tentative noises for their contributors while thinking about the science behind the experience. I think it's only after a couple of weeks when we might have noted a spike in numbers here that we can really categorically say whether or not this experiment has failed. And believe you me, it is an experiment. And unfortunately, if the government gets this one wrong, we're talking about lives lost. So it's no joke here, I'm afraid. And the Prime Minister better have got his sums right, because there will be hell to pay.
So one of the things that they might have gotten wrong is the messaging, because like you rightly said, people are confused as to how to interpret these guidelines coming from the Prime Minister. So how are people responding? Are people on the streets, or they're staying back at home?
Well, the confusion lies at the heart of all this problem, because if you have somebody essentially passing the buck saying, if you can, do, but if you can't, well, it's kind of okay, it's going to be left to individual workplaces. It's going to be left to individuals themselves to say, I am at risk and therefore I will not chance it. I will not put my health on the line. But what happens maybe after October? We're looking at statistics released today that say a third, that's 1 in 3 of businesses that have closed during the lockdown may not reopen. That's a huge economic hit. So we're in this position where people are looking at their bottom lines to make a decision instead of looking at the pure health. And I'm not quite sure which other major country in Europe and beyond will be able to put the economics aside and just look at the health benefits, because can a bankrupt country actually help us when this is all over? I don't know. But personally speaking, I think it's a little too soon, and it would have been better. So let's just see how this wave goes before giving complicated, confused, and woolly message, and essentially passing the buck and making the individuals responsible for what comes next, as opposed to firm government guidance.
Journalist Amina Attilo, thanks for talking to TVC News.